Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dr. Jones Optimization Academy, where I get to interview some of my favorites in medicine, health, fitness, and beyond. And we are excited for part 2 of the Mighty Mitochondria, also known as Mitochondria 101, also known as Magnificent Mitochondria. You call it what you want, they're amazing. And this is part 2. And so in part 1, we talked about what mitochondria are, a little bit about where they came from and what they do and what happens when they go wrong. So it's not when keeping it real goes wrong, but when mitochondria go wrong. And in part 2, we're going to dive into what you can do on your own, what you can do with your doctor, and we'll talk about different, just avenues of that. For those of you that missed part 1, I want to reintroduce Dr. Jones. Dr. Carrie Jones is a naturopathic doctor, a master of public health. She is on the Naturopathic Board of Endocrinologists, and she is an internationally recognized speaker, consultant, and educator on women's health and hormones with 2 decades in the industry. So lots of experience. She does not look like she's been doing this for 20 years. That is what mitochondria do for you. And
naturopathic medicine.
Yes, and hormones and all the good things that we do. And currently, she's the head of medical education at Rupa Health and the host of the Root Cause Medicine podcast. If you didn't pause this and go subscribe to that in part 1, shame on you. But we're not here to judge. You go do that right now. We're excited to have her back on the show. So welcome back, Dr. Jones. How is it going?
I am excited to talk about part 2, our mighty mitochondria.
Indeed. So just to really that quick recap, because one of the things that we talked about in part 1, which sets the stage for this, is all these things that mitochondrial dysfunction are implicated in. And this list is a scroll. We're talking arthritis and diabetes and obesity and fatigue and fibromyalgia. And I was reading somewhere about multiple sclerosis and autism and bipolar disease. And so when it comes down to it, mitochondria have this role that if they're not functioning properly, you're going to feel it top to bottom, left and right, up and down.
Yep.
And so that's a big part of understanding where we're going from part 2, because if we know this is a thing, and it is, what can we do about it, right? And what can we do about it long term? So the way I want to structure this, Carrie, is talk about, just like we do with our naturopathic medicine, our levels here are, oh my God, our therapeutic order. There we go.
the therapeutic order.
Tell the board that I spaced out on therapeutic order and all that good stuff. So let's talk about some of the things that people can do for themselves at home without even seeing a doctor to help improve their mitochondrial function.
Yeah. So the mitochondria, as we were saying in part 1, your mitochondria are very sensitive, let's say. They get damaged very easily. They make something called free radicals. It's just a part of their production. Making a hormone, you make free radicals. Exercising, you make free radicals, but also getting exposed to chemicals or toxicants, you're going to make free radicals. So how do you put out the free radicals? How do you quench those? We use antioxidants. So one of the big things that you can do at home that doesn't require a whole lot of time, effort, or budget is to evaluate your diet. Are you getting enough diversity? Are you eating the rainbow? Because that's where you're going to get basically it's like your fire department that's going to put out these free radicals. I mean, things like zinc, right? Things like CoQ10, things like all your B vitamins, things like vitamin C, things like melatonin, which we'll talk about with sleep. But all of this stuff, and yes, you can get melatonin in food. Things like pistachios and cherries are high in melatonin. All these things provide the base for your antioxidants for your mitochondria. So first things first is your diet. What are you eating? Second is sleep. Speaking of melatonin, we talked about this before. Sleep is where you repair. Sleep is where you make the majority of something called growth hormone. It does literally what it says it's going to do. It's help your body grow, regrow, repair. It's like the scrubbing bubbles that goes through. You also produce melatonin, which is a really big antioxidant, like I said. So it helps to repair damaged mitochondria that aren't doing so well. Exercise. Move your booty. Now, maybe don't move it so much. Don't exercise so much that you are over exercising and it's actually stressing you out. But if you are listening to this going, I haven't exercised in a week or a month or a year, when you get moving and stretch your skeletal muscles, that helps to activate mitochondria. Cold is helpful for the mitochondria. So you may have seen on social media, if you're on social media, there's all the rage about like cold plunges and cold showers and swim in a cold lake. And the rumors are true that cold activates what's called the shiver response, which is literally shivering. And it's this thing called thermogenesis, and that's what your mitochondria do. So to help to shiver them, to help with their healing powers, get into cold. Take a cold shower, end your shower in cold. If you don't want to take a cold shower, take your regular hot shower and a cold shower. Swim in that cold lake, swim in that cold pool this summer, do the cold plunge. That can be really helpful. Light exposure, red light exposure can be helpful. A little bit of sun exposure can be helpful. I'm not saying you have to spend 8 hours in the sun burning yourself, something I could never do. This coloring would not allow that. But 10 or 15 minutes in the sun increases the vitamin D, releases endorphins, and helps support my mitochondria. The list goes on and on and on. These are just like simple things of how and why. We talk about exercise all the time. We talk about being outside in the sun all the time. We talk about getting good sleep all the time. But when you know the why does it work? How does it work? How is it, what is it actually doing in my body? Then it can be helpful to supporting the mitochondria.
Excellent, excellent. What are your thoughts on fasting and intermittent fasting and mitochondrial health?
I completely even forgot about that. So fasting and intermittent fasting have been shown to be quite helpful for our mitochondria. So when our mitochondria get damaged, they have a couple options. For being sensitive, they're very intelligent. So they can literally cut off the part of them that's damaged and send it away. So if they have a broken arm, they will cut off the broken arm because that's useless to them and it will send it away. But now you are a mitochondria with no arm. So you have to do something about it. Your other option is to what's called biogenesis. So one option of biogenesis is to see another mitochondria that's also broken and merge with it. So if I'm missing my left arm and you're missing your right arm, we can come together and go, oh, you have a left arm and I have a right arm. Let's merge together. So we'll be a bigger, better, badder mitochondria. So fasting and intermittent fasting helps promote these things. It helps support biogenesis. It helps support repair. It helps support like get rid of the broken arm because that's useless and actually holding you back. Mm-hmm. And let's try to merge and repair moving forward. And fasting, intermittent fasting can have really great impact on blood sugar and insulin. And a blood sugar or insulin that's not doing well, it's too high, is actually quite damaging to the mitochondria. So not only do you support mitochondrial repair with fasting and intermittent fasting, but you also support your blood sugar, which then again, downstream, supports mitochondria.
It's amazing to think about that, something as simple as intermittent fasting, and we talk about a lot in our clinic with patients we think are dealing with senescence. We think about cellular senescence, but I also think, then there's mitochondrial senescence, right? Because you mentioned that broken arm, that mitochondria that's not functioning well, and our bodies should purge it, should get rid of it, mitophagy, right? Or autophagy is in most cells, but there's also the process of mitophagy, but really hard to, say, okay, you can't just say, here's a supplement for mitophagy. It doesn't work that way, right? But our body has a mechanism to help you clear things out, not just the bad mitochondria, but also bad cells. And that's through fasting. This is when you have a chance for the body to not worry about breaking down your 700 grams of carbs and just clear some stuff out. And there's value, even if it's not something you do long term, because it's like any other diet, it's so hard to sustain something forever, right? But it's kind of good to make sure that's part of the protocol if we're trying to, optimize health.
Yeah.
And so now the fun part, because now speaking of scrolls and long list alert. So what are some of the supplements that you have seen be beneficial for improving mitochondrial function?
Yeah, oh my gosh. So when you're inside the mitochondria, so picture yourself inside your mitochondria and you are making free radicals at the same time you're trying to make a hormone or trying to make energy, ATP. Your first antioxidant system that shows up is called superoxide dismutase, SOD. And it uses a couple of co-nutrients. Manganese is one of them. Zinc is another one. So making sure you get manganese and zinc in your diet or as part of your multi or extra if you need it is great. Now, if that doesn't work for whatever reason, then catalase with a C, catalase comes in and there's actually supplements out there that have catalase in them. I have not seen the literature on them, but I do know that they exist. So catalase is the next thing. Now, let's say catalase doesn't work, or catalase is what takes your free radical, so does superoxide dismutase, and it converts it into a next hydrogen peroxide is what it turns it into. So we think of hydrogen peroxide that if you get a cut, if you get swimmer's ear, like we use hydrogen peroxide topically for health stuff all the time. In our cell, too much is a problem. So now we activate our glutathione system. So glutathione comes in, glutathione being a very potent antioxidant comes in to neutralize basically it turns hydrogen peroxide into water. Well, what is it used to do that? It uses selenium. So if you're not getting enough selenium in your diet, if you don't eat Brazil nuts or foods with selenium, or you're not taking it, and then how do you reactivate? Because glutathione to do that gets converted, and then you need to flip it back. You need to like give it its superpower back again. And it uses B vitamins, B2, B3, helpful getting it back around the circle, so to speak. And so just these extra, this is just basically like what's in the mitochondria. CoQ10 we think of with heart disease, statins, but it's actually a shuttler, like a shuttle bus that helps shuttle electrons in our mitochondria. So if we don't have a lot of CoQ10, it potentially is a struggle in our mitochondria. I think of B12. A particular part of B12 is called with an A, adenylyl B12. You have a few forms of B12 out there. Adenylyl B12 is what helps the cycle before it, known as the Krebs cycle, go round and round. It helps one piece get into it. It's like the converting nutrient that helps a piece get into it so you can move on to the Krebs cycle. So people only think of, oh, there's only one, methyl B12. I have MTHFR, I'm taking methyl Bs. That's great. It's the A form, it's the adenylyl B12. And I mean, the list goes, I'm just walking through the steps, and these are just
so
carnitine,
many.
right? Like
Yep.
carnitine is a shuttler as well. It's a shuttler in when you, like the CoQ10 shuttle bus, carnitine is a different shuttle bus. So if you're not getting enough carnitine, not enough meat per se, then you're not taking, if you need a supplement, carnitine can be a really big one. I mentioned melatonin earlier. Melatonin is a very potent antioxidant. It will just go up to free radicals and just grab them and get rid of them. All of our like vitamin C, vitamin E, the things we think of like, oh, when I'm sick, I take antioxidants. It's the same things that work for mitochondria. Green tea. There's an active form of the active part of green tea is an acronym. It's known as EGCG. So drinking good quality organic green tea, or some people take the supplement green tea to help them. Flavonoids, it's the stuff in blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, right? The skins of berries have all these flavonoids. No, wine doesn't count. I get, oh, that means I can have red wine. It does not. Alcohol is destructive to mitochondria, which we didn't say in the first one. We should have said that. Alcohol is destructive to the mitochondria. That was sort of a given, and I forgot. So no, you can't do red wine and call it an antioxidant. It doesn't work. But there are pieces like resveratrol, which are from grape skins, so dark grapes or resveratrol. So you can see I'm building like people are, oh my gosh, this is so many. Do I have to take all of these? Well, first of all, no, don't go out and buy all these. Don't take all these, but work with somebody like Dr. Jones who knows what they're doing and can really direct it towards you.
Amazing. This is the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other right now. It's like, which Dr. Jones are you talking about?
Right.
This one, or that one.
Right. You.
I know. And it's because we'll talk about it at the end, and Dr. Jones is kind of out of the patient taking business, but is doing amazing things. And so I'm just happy to have her here and all that good stuff. And so one day I want to grow up and be like you. And so it's like my patients are like, what? Where are you going?
We already got the name, so we're halfway there.
Where are you going? And so some of the other ones I really like, lipoic acid. Big fan of that one. You mentioned resveratrol, and you have obviously I change it out depending on the person, but I have my big three: CoQ10, resveratrol, and lipoic acid. Is like, hey, here's your once a day, get you started down the pathway if I think there's some mitochondrial dysfunction, and have them take that for a month before we do some of the advanced therapies and just set the stage. The B vitamin thing is amazing because even before I got heavy into mitochondria, I just went back to my old notes and looked at the TCA cycle and said, what B vitamins make this thing go? And that's where your area B2 and B3 and B12 came in. And you're like, oh, okay. But now that I know that I should be looking at adenylyl B12.
Adenylyl B12 helps methylmalonyl-CoA becomes succinyl-CoA. So methylmalonyl-CoA cannot become succinyl-CoA. Succinyl-CoA is part of the TCA or Krebs cycle. So it literally can't convert into succinyl without adenylyl B12. So the A form of B12. Yeah. And there's PQQ. Do you ever use PQQ? That's another, I have no idea how to pronounce it. Don't ask me how to pronounce it. It's like CoQ10, sort of. But that's another favorite of mine. The PQQ lozenges can really help in a pinch.
I've had a chance to use that because, and we talked a little bit about this earlier. Like I'm very big into peptide therapy, and I have certain patients that they don't work. And you're like, how is this not working? This is a sequence of amino acids that you essentially make yourself. Like, what's stopping this? And then especially we use some of the peptides that stimulate your natural growth hormone production, and they won't work. They won't get better sleep. They won't get better recovery. They won't feel anything. And the light bulb goes off, like it's a mitochondrial issue, because there's some studies showing that your body will not produce efficient growth hormone if your mitochondria are dysfunctional. And so we'll do glutamine, we'll do that combo, we'll do PQQ, and we'll kind of find the right mix for the person. And they, hey, let's stop the peptides for about a month. Let's get your mitochondria going well, and to get back on that and see how they do. So this stuff all interplays, and it's pretty amazing. So and there's supplements as well, like the NAD supplements. And look at that. Oh, I segued again.
What are we talking about next?
I can't help myself. I cannot help myself from segueing. And so, we kind of covered some things you can do with diet and lifestyle and make sure you exercise. And there's a ton of different supplements that are, and it makes sense that all these supplements are beneficial for mitochondria, because every cell besides red blood cells has mitochondria, and so brain cells, all the cells need mitochondria. So there are going to be certain supplements that are going to be better for certain systems in the body. That's just kind of my opinion on that as well. So, and that's where having a doctor who's experienced in these things, like, wait a minute, I want to improve this. Let's focus on a supplement. Like, say, if someone was having, some more brain fog issues, more focus concentration issues, I may actually do omega-3s as part of their mitochondrial improvement protocol. So it just depends on the person and what they have going on. So that being said, let's talk about a few of the quote unquote advanced options for improving mitochondria. So so if you have, you have your patients or, people that you consult, writing your amazing books and all articles and all of that, and you've already addressed some of the things like the diet, lifestyle, and supplements, and we're still not moving the needle, what's next?
Well, so since you so conveniently brought up NAD, I did an experiment on myself. I did their liposomal NAD, and I quite honestly didn't notice anything. So for example, if I'm having really, really tired morning, or before a conference where I have to focus a lot, so I know my brain is going to need I want the mitochondria really working, jet lag, like I would do the sublingual NAD. I didn't really notice anything. No slam to Quicksilver. I know other people who swear by the product, because NAD is really helpful for, of course, mitochondria. So then I switched and I did NADH, and I noticed a much bigger difference with dissolve the under the tongue NADH. That worked within about 30 minutes. I feel like a whole new person when I do that. But I know people who feel the opposite. I know people who love the NAD and do better with that. And so I always find that so fast. Again, it just individualized medicine, because you can see a social media post or a blog and go, oh, NAD, I'm gonna go buy that, and be like, oh, that junk didn't work for me. It's like, oh, well, that's not the one you needed. You might have needed the other one. So NAD is one. And I know I've never done an IV, but I know you do it IV. And tell me, what's your experience with it?
Oh, love it. Love it. It is a foundation of my practice here. It's like I'm like my dog. I'm like shaking, ready to talk about. Like,
your tail's going.
Is she gonna tell me to come here and talk about NAD?
Of course.
And so we tend to do a lot more with NAD and subcutaneous NAD injections, just because we're able to deliver a higher dose of it. And this is where it gets fascinating. It's so patient specific and individualized. It's like, okay, how much is enough, and when to use it, and how much to use it, right? Because NAD, obviously, when you think about going more, like all super biochemical on us here, is when we go from how our body uses glucose in terms of pyruvate, goes to TCA cycle, then it's going to make NAD and FAD, and that's going to go to the electron transport chain, and you're going to make energy, right? So if we're giving you NAD, the thought process is, okay, we can make more ATP because we're giving you the direct, input to that. And that's great. And we look at it, but I also think that that's kind of oversimplifying it in many ways, because, all right, if we know that some of the studies show that NAD can actually stimulate that mitochondrial biogenesis and mitophagy, getting rid of the old NAD. And depending on the source, that maybe this one I'm going to do a future podcast on, is why does NAD suck? What I mean by that is, when you're doing an NAD IV, it just feels this pressure, almost like a tightness. Some people get cramping, they get a little just gut issues, nausea. And I think it's more adenosine. Because, and this, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but there are theories that NAD will convert to adenosine, and you have transporters for adenosine. And some of the symptoms of excess adenosine intake are the same symptoms of too much of an NAD IV.
Interesting.
So that's something I'm working through, and I want to talk about in future podcasts and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, if we're able to improve mitochondrial function, this is a way to do it. But we have to be smart about it, because if I give you 1,000 milligrams of NAD, it's just like anything else, something's got to give. And that something's got to give is that you need methylation factors to metabolize NAD. If I have someone, talked about this very briefly, part one, if I have someone with an MTHFR defect and I'm giving you a ton of NAD and you're already hurting on mental factors, I'm probably hurting you versus helping you.
Right.
So there's other, parts to look at that. But we do great things in NAD. And I think from a mitochondrial standpoint, I think it's one of the more direct things we have and effective things. We just can't just throw NAD at people. And I'm big on not just sitting everyone in my chair and giving them 700 milligrams of NAD. I used to. I was about that life, Carrie. I was about it. Like, oh, you want some NAD? Give you all the NAD.
Let's do it.
Right. See you
then
next
you got
week.
older and more mature.
See you next week. And all that good stuff. So, but no, and that's a big part of it as well. So, and we talked about this a little bit briefly before we hopped on. And I'm going to kind of, instead of throwing it back to you and then you throw it back to me, and we're playing hopscotch here a little bit. Another one of the advanced options that we have for mitochondrial function is peptide therapy. And I'm not gonna belabor it and say peptides or a sequence of amino acids are probably used the same molecules. Yeah. Look at the, you got it. You're right. So, but essentially there are 3 peptides that we are getting more information on and seeing how they can benefit mitochondrial function. ModSC is kind of like, I'm not going to spell out the whole mitochondrial open reading frame of the 16, blah, blah, blah. Well, ModSC is the 12S. And so basically this is a mitochondrial peptide. Your mitochondria make ModSC. And ModSC is a peptide that can improve mitochondrial function, improve mitochondrial metabolism. There's some improvements on actually getting glucose in the skeletal muscle. So actually helping with body composition. And when it comes to treating all these conditions of mitochondrial dysfunction, amazing. My second favorite one is SS31. It's not a mitochondrial peptide, but we have receptors for SS31 in the mitochondria. SS31 is very special because it binds to the cardiolipin. Oh, I hope I didn't mess this up. Oh, they're going to kick me out of the peptide club if I mess this up. So it binds the cardiolipin within the mitochondria and actually reduces those reactive oxygen species, which is so important. Because SS31, I'm actually starting to use in some of my kidney disease patients, because a lot of the kidney disease or kidney dysfunction is an excess of reactive oxidative species or too much oxidative stress. So that's kind of a thing we're working on. The last one is humanin. It's also a mitochondrial peptide. I've never prescribed it, so I can't talk about it too much, but it's also, when I read the literature, it looks just like ModSC, just more expensive. And like, let's stick with this until I know more. So those are like the big 3 mitochondrial peptides that are on the table as well. So, all right.
That is cool.
Look at that. Another ramble sandwich. Like some mayonnaise with that ramble sandwich.
A lot of people don't know about peptides though, or maybe they've briefly heard of it, but it gets attached to generic thing, bodybuilding, and they're like, oh, peptides, that's for them. Whereas everyone, there's lots of peptides out there that can benefit lots of different conditions and symptoms, and everyone from an athlete to the soccer mom to a teenager. Like a lot of our colleagues who do peptides, you treat a variety of things. So I like that you talk about peptides, not only for mitochondria, but just to get the awareness out more that they're not just reserved for a certain elite set.
No, they are not. But at the end of the day, and that's another one of my spiels I have on newer patients here, we talk about establishing the foundation. What's the pathway? And the pathway is not, hey, I just met you 5 minutes ago. Let's give you some NAD and some peptides, in most cases, because we talked about this again briefly before we got on, is like, okay, we need to figure out what your root cause is. Like what's causing that mitochondrial dysfunction or that cellular dysfunction or that inflammation oxidation. Because if I just start throwing our long list of supplements at you and I start giving you peptides and NAD, in many ways, it's like I just took the battery out of the fire alarm, and right, but I didn't
Still a
fix it.
fire.
Yeah, but what happens, all right, when you stop taking it, or we never addressed it, put the battery
Yep.
back in, the alarm's right back.
Yep.
And we didn't make any progress. So I think that's a big part of it is foundation. And I love these things. They're cool and they're sexy and they're so fun to talk about, but we have to get that foundation set. So.
And people will come into your office. They talk. They're, oh, I tried that. I did antioxidant supports. I tried all those. They didn't work for me. But as you and I said before, if you don't change anything else, then it's just a Band-Aid on a leaking dam. Like it's just not going to rock your world. You have to hit those foundations, like you said. The supplements, the injections, the IVs just push you to the finish line faster, assuming you are also addressing the cause, building up those foundations.
It's amazing. It's such a cool thing. This is why I love what we do, and all these cool things. So this has been great. It's been fun. I am so grateful that you made time for us for part 1 and part 2 and got to talk about mitochondria. And I hope that anyone listening or watching has a better understanding of mitochondria and why that is something that, even if it's not, it's kind of hard to go into the doctor's office like, hey, my mitochondria aren't working well. Like, where'd you get that from? The Dr. Joneses, both of those Dr. Joneses. They both said it. It must be true. And so, I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this. And again, I am grateful for your time and expertise. For those who did not listen to part 1, again, shame on you if you did not, if you skipped it. But if people want more information on what you do and your journey and what you're up to these days, where can we find you?
Social media. I hang out Instagram. I'm at dr.carriejones, and I have ventured into TikTok. I'm at Dr. Carrie Jones there as well. And my website is drcarriejones.com. So I do a lot of education, predominantly in the hormones. I absolutely talk about mitochondria over there. Hey. So give me a follow.
Excellent. Go follow the root cause
medicine podcast.
The root cause medicine podcast, and learn some things and get educated and be, educating our patients is the biggest thing. The smarter you are, the better patient you're going to be. And that's exciting news for us all. All right, Carrie, we are done. We will see you soon. And you have messed up. You have been such a good guest that you're coming back. And
love it.
just know you're on the hook now.
I appreciate it. Anytime.
You've joined us. You're one of us now. So, hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate you and have a great day.